Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Maddie and today I'm gonna give you very specific book recommendations that you guys actually asked for. I went through my Instagram and I put up a little question thing on my story and I said, please ask for very specific book recommendations. I feel like I'm not the best at giving book recommendations, if I'm being completely honest. I know that's literally what my whole channel is about, but I sometimes feel like I recommend the same books over and over again. So if you hear any repeats from books that we've talked about before, I'm sorry. I can only read so many books at once. Even though that I am reading a decent amount of books in a year, it's hard to recommend books. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It's really hard. So please bear with me. The first recommendation I asked for was Big City Loves. And I do have one book. Actually, it's two books. You guys probably already know what it is. I'm gonna put them up on the screen because I don't feel like getting all of the books off my shelf. Mile High and The Right Move by Liz Tom Ford. Caught Up, the third book in this series, actually comes out in a few months. Both of these books will blow your mind. If you like contemporary romance, sports romance, forced proximity, brother's best friend, like there are so many good tropes in this book, but it is set in the city. It's set in Chicago, I believe. I believe that's where it's set. And I would say in Mile High you get more of the city vibe. You don't get a lot of the city, I feel like, in The Right Move. It's more tailored around the relationship. The city isn't a big part of these books, but everyone is from Chicago, so it's very like the sporting events happen in Chicago, all of the drama in their apartments are in Chicago, but it's not like they're out on the town all the time, if that makes sense. If you like Binding 13 and The Fine Print and Say You Swear, all of those books give me very similar, but I feel like Mile High and The Right Move go so much deeper into character development, and like the depth of these characters is unreal. Like, you get to know these characters front and back. They feel like they're your best friends or you are in the actual book. Like, I could not recommend Liz Tom Ford any more than I already am. So, Big City Love, baby. The next one is Beginner Fantasy. Now, I'm going to tell you what got me into fantasy, and then I'm going to tell you what I think might be a good beginner fantasy, but I didn't necessarily start with it. So I started out with my all-time favorite fantasy series. I've talked about it a million times before, Dark Fever by Karen Marie Moning. This is a very long series. It's actually like there's 5 books, I believe, and then a spin-off of another like 5 or 6 books. Right here. This series right here, Dark Fever, is the first book. I think this series for me helped get into fantasy because there is a little bit of romance in it, but it's not like anyone has crazy magical powers or there's this big magic system that's really hard to understand. It's very easy. You're kind of like in our world with fantasy elements. So it's kind of easy to grasp, easy to hold on to, and I loved this. This is actually what got me into fantasy romance back in 2020. Now, if I were to give a recommendation on a beginner fantasy, honestly, I would go with like Jennifer Armentrout. I feel like she does a very good job of keeping it minimal. Like, she keeps the romance heavy, fantasy light, but there's still fantasy elements in it. You know, pointy teeth, wings, sexy men. It's still fantasy, but it's just not high fantasy like Brandon Sanderson or anything. I forgot what the first book is. I think it's White Hot Kiss. I'll put it up on the screen right here. There are 3 books and there's also a spin-off of another 3 books, and it's kind of cheesy. I'm not gonna lie. It was written like early 2013-ish, I believe, so there is some like cheesy elements in it. I don't think it's the best writing, but it's an easy grasp onto fantasy romance and like to fantasy in general. Jennifer Armentrout, she's always a good go-to. I think, again, like her From Blood and Ash series, I would even say is beginner. It's just dense. So her other series like White Hot Kiss and stuff, those are more on the like faster pace, shorter books, easy to read. An adult fantasy with a love triangle. This is hard because I don't, and this might just be a character trait of me, I don't really pay attention to tropes that much. Like, I'm not a big, oh, I have to read a brother's best friend or enemies to lovers. I don't really pick on a trope and stick with it. So honestly, a lot of books, and probably a lot of adult fantasy books, have love triangles. But the first one that comes to mind, and don't hate me, is Fourth Wing. And I know, like, the person who probably asked this has probably already read Fourth Wing, but that's genuinely the only one I can really... Oh, Dance of Thieves. Dance of Thieves does it? I might have completely just made that up. I'm thinking of The Kiss of Deception. One of those two. Yeah, I don't really focus on specific tropes when recommending books, so this one's kind of hard for me. I'm sorry. A fantasy romance. We're starting out heavy with these fantasy ones. I feel like it's a very popular genre right now. A lot of romance readers are kind of drifting into this fantasy romance era, the romantasy, and I'm all for it. Like, this is my favorite genre of all time, so I'm welcoming everyone with open arms. One is reverse harem. If you don't know what reverse harem is, it's when there is one girl and multiple men. The Psycho Shifters trilogy, it's Psycho Shifters, Psycho Fae, and Psycho Beasts. I might have that order wrong, but wait, let me turn on my little house. This little guy has a light. You guys can't even see it. Okay, sorry, that was delayed. And then the second one that I'm gonna recommend, it's not reverse harem, is gonna be Serpent in the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I love this series. It's so easy. It's very easy to catch on to and read about this world. The politics are kind of heavy, but in a way that's very understandable, so you won't have like a ton of questions. There are, I think, some like plot holes, but you look past them. I loved the slow burn aspect of it. There was a lot of sexual tension at the beginning, but then it led into more steamy, fun stuff, you know. Next one. I feel like, again, all of these are so popular, and that's why I don't even really like recommending books, because I feel like everyone reads the ones I read, because I like reading popular books. So yeah. This one's hard because it says fantasy romance not everyone has heard of. I really read a lot of popular fantasy romance, so it's kind of hard for me to make a recommendation, if I'm being honest on this. I'm like trying really hard to think. Have you guys heard of Sarah J. Maas? She is a great... I don't think many people have heard of her. I actually really, really enjoy her work. Maybe A Broken Blade is not very talked about. I didn't love it, but it wasn't bad. I plan maybe to read the second one eventually, but I did rate the first one 2 stars. So that's not even a good recommendation. Don't read it. No, read it, because some people might like it. I just had a problem with one thing in the plot. So A Broken Blade is a fantasy romance, and I did kind of like it, but not... Why am I fucking lying? I'm lying. I didn't like it. I can't make up my mind. But I don't even want to really recommend it because I didn't like it, but you might. So you go try it. We all have different opinions, so I am going to recommend it. Just because, like, what if you do like it, you know? Okay. A slow burn, less than 400 pages. When I first saw this one, I was a little confused because if you think about it, slow burns are pretty long. Like Mariana Zapata, queen of the slow burns, her books are over 500 pages long most of the time. Or like Binding 13, which I just recently read, slow burn, really long, like 640 some pages, you know, like very long. So it's hard to find a slow burn, but I did it. And you know what it is? It's Emily McIntyre. I just read Crossed from her, and this book, the tension is so heavy. The tension is insane. It's about a priest and about a stripper. Okay, let's not call her a stripper. She's a dancer. And he's a stalker, a little bit. Also a little bit of a serial killer, kind of dips his toes in that. It's dark, just so you're aware, but it is slow. Like, it is a slow burn, but it is short, which is wonderful. You get a lot of the sexual, erotic stuff at the end, so it's a slow build up, and then it's amazing. It's wonderful. I really, really loved this one. I forgot what I rated it, but you'll see that in my August wrap up. So it's worth the wait, and the twist at the end, did not see that coming. Okay. A discreet cover. I thought this was such a good recommendation to give. I just read, like last month, I read Until I Get You. This one is spicy, it's dark, it's a darker, I've said it before, it's a darker version of Icebreaker. It's like a hockey sports romance, but there's a little bit of trigger warnings in there. So I loved this book, but the cover is so discreet. Actually, I'll just grab this one because it's literally right here. You would never guess that it's hockey. You would never guess that there's a lot of trigger warnings in here. You just see the cover, little smoky, and you just say, huh, someone must have dropped their cigarette on the ground. But it is very discreet. It's nice. You can take this one out in public. You can go on a picnic and read it while someone's just getting pounded in this book. Okay, anyway. Honestly, a lot of sports romances have pretty discreet covers, but anything kind of dark but still gives butterflies. And this one is kind of like describes all of the books that I read. You know, like I read a lot of darker romances, but they all have like very sweet main characters and have dark elements to their past, and then like, you know, whatever. I absolutely would recommend Binding 13. I just finished this one also. I did a 24-hour readathon, which is coming out soon, so just wait for that. But Binding 13 I just read, and I bracketed so much in this book, like just constant writing in it. Like I love this book, and it is so dark and upsetting and traumatizing. The trigger warnings are real in this one. It is very graphic. It will make you cry, but also will die laughing. Like I actually laughed out loud at multiple dialogue scenes in this book. If you read it and you know who Gibbsy is, you know why it makes you laugh. Like it's dark, but it also, like Johnny, I need all men to read this book, I think. Like, it would just, I need everyone to be like Johnny. Johnny is the epitome of a perfect man. He's just so sweet. He's just so sweet. Johnny himself will give you butterflies, and you will want to cry and hug and be there for Shannon, but you can't because she's a fictional character. I hate that cover, but I mean, it's fine. We're gonna get the new ones when they come out. Darkest romance. I'm guessing this is like the darkest romance I've read. Haunting Adeline and The Ritual give the same energy. I understand that they're dark, but they're almost so dark it's cheesy. Like I don't enjoy those books. So I would say those are like the darkest that I've read technically, but I feel like Emily McIntyre or even Binding 13, like what we just talked about, like those books are dark in a different way. Like they, and just so you know, I had a comment on my YouTube the other day asking what dark romance is. Dark romance is mature content with possible trigger warnings. It is meant for 18 and up, and some people probably won't like it. So just so you know, like dark romance is not, I forgot what the comment said, but they thought dark romance was just like set in different time periods, and I was like, no, just so you know, it's sexual, it's maybe a little scary, and maybe a little unrealistic, and there's a lot of triggers usually. That is it for this video. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you liked some of these recommendations. I'm sorry if you've read all of them and you're like, shit, I didn't get anything new out of this. I understand. I recommend a lot of the same books to people. If you want to leave your comments down below of specific recommendations from these questions that were asked, please go ahead and do so. I'm always taking new recommendations. All of my links are down below to be my friend on social media, my Instagram, my Bookstagram, my Goodreads. Go follow me on there so you can see what I'm currently reading. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you guys in the next video.